Why don't you let me take you away?
He's my husband. I can't just run away as if I were free.
No, but there's another way out. You don't owe Peter anything. His fears have killed his love for you, and besides, he's dangerous. I'd never forgive myself if anything happened to you.
What are we to do?
He got away.
Peter, why don't you confide in us? You've got to tell us what you're afraid of.
If you don't, we can't possibly help.
How often must I tell you my life is in danger? Why won't you or the police believe it?
You're seeing ghosts.
Ghosts? Ghosts that hide behind bushes and then drive away in cars?
Oh, but we do believe you. We do, Peter.
You need help, Peter. Not only from the police.
Yes. You mean a doctor, of course. Don't think that you're fooling me. I know exactly what you both would like. You're trying to find a way to get rid of me.
I can't go on like this any longer. We seem to be living in a trap. What and who are you afraid of? We hide away here in this terrible old house, but what are we hiding from? Won't you tell us what you're afraid of once and for all? How can we help you if you have no confidence in either of us? I am your wife, not your enemy. Don't you trust even me?
No. I trust nobody on this earth. Nobody.
It's no use.
What are we to do?
Don't worry, Ellen. Leave it to me.
Good night, Emily.
Good night.
Good night, Emily.
Miss, Hartley Hall is in the locality, I believe.
Yes, sir. It's down the street and straight ahead.
Uh-huh.
You're not thinking of buying it, are you? It's been sold for quite some time.
We're not buyers. Mr. Blackburn still lives there.
Yes, sir.
Oh, I wonder if you could tell us the name of the local police inspector.
Inspector French.
Inspector French.
That's right.
Would you be good enough to telephone him? Tell him Mr. Sherlock Holmes would like to see him here immediately. It's a matter of the greatest importance.
Mr. Holmes?
Yes. You are Inspector French?
That's right.
Ah, delighted to meet you. How do you do? Dr. Watson, would you care to sit down and join us in a beer?
With pleasure.
Another beer, please, miss.
Straight away.
Now, what can I do for you, Mr. Holmes?
Mr. Blackburn is a tenant of Hartley Hall, is he not?
He is?
Am I right in assuming that he's in constant fear for his life?
As a matter of fact, he's in contact with the police at least once every month.
Indeed. In that case, I think we should get up to Hartley Hall immediately.
You mean right now?
Right now, Inspector.
Hello? Just a minute. For you, Inspector.
For me? Ah, yes. Thanks, Emily. French speaking? Yes, naturally. I'll be there right away. Peter Blackburn is dead.
His head is completely shattered. Shot at close range, don't you know?
We'll leave everything as we found it until the police from Scotland Yard come. Inspector Cooper telephoned to say that he'd be right along.
By all means, let us leave everything to Inspector Cooper.
Where were you when Mr. Blackburn met his death?
I was in my room. I was doing some reading before turning in. Then I heard a shot and I ran downstairs.
Was the door open?
No.
The murderer broke into the French window. He stuck a bit of fly paper on the pane so the piece of glass wouldn't make any noise.
It's unquestionably a professional job. What did you find when you entered the room, Mr. King?
That.
Did you see anyone running away?
No, I didn't.
Where was Mrs. Blackburn?
Up in her room. I told her to stay there because I didn't want her to see this.
You think he committed suicide?
Well, that pane of glass was pushed in from the outside. There are traces of blood here. The murderer must have stepped in it.
And that leaves no doubt whatsoever. Mr. Blackburn surprised a burglar and was killed. The culprit then ran away, leaving the murder weapon behind. Scotland Yard will surely make the same deduction.
It's not quite as simple as that, Inspector.
Peter was rehanging that picture over the fireplace yesterday. That's why the hammer was here.
Why did the intruder leave this ring? It appears to be of value.
I guess he was frightened and overlooked it.
Where is Mrs. Blackburn now?
She's upstairs. She's terribly upset.
Naturally. No doubt Inspector Cooper will take her statement. But why did the killer take Blackburn's wedding ring?
Maybe he didn't wear one.
Oh, that's right. I can't remember Peter wearing a wedding ring.
No. Then I suggest we send for the butler.
Ask the butler to come here.
Oh, there you are. Do you recall whether Mr. Blackburn wore his wedding ring above or below the serpent ring?
Below the serpent ring, sir.
You're quite sure?
I would swear to it.
We shall see what the inspector makes of that. Watson, I seem to remember some very interesting trees in the garden. I'd rather like to take a closer look at them. What about you?
Oh, yes. Yes. If you're looking for trees, they're right in front of you. That will be Scotland Yard.
Yes, Inspector Cooper, no doubt.
Don't you want to see him?
No, not yet.
What do you suppose that is?
It looks remarkably like a grave.
A grave? But that's not large enough to bury a dog in.
Be careful, Watson. Don't spoil the footprints. Leave that to the inspector.
What could possibly be buried there?
Clothes. Very old clothes.
Old clothes? I see.
He must have tried to defend himself with the hammer.
Precisely, Inspector. Faultless deduction.
Ah, so you knew about this murder too, Mr. Holmes.
Knew? No. But I suspected that it would occur.
Were you acquainted with the deceased?
I was not. I heard him mentioned for the first time quite recently.
By whom?
By a distinguished archaeologist whose name is Moriarty.
Ah, so you naturally assume that he's the murderer.
I'm afraid it's not quite as simple as all that, Inspector. The gentleman in question has a perfect alibi. Professor Moriarty, the famous archaeologist, will deliver a lecture on Egyptian antiquities at 8 o'clock tonight at the Penn Club.
And Blackburn was killed between 9 and 10 o'clock.
Correct. So it cannot possibly be Moriarty. The lecture is over at 11.
Well, we know that Blackburn was murdered before 11. Have you any brilliant ideas?
I never deliver a theory, Inspector, without all the facts at my disposal.
Mrs. Blackburn, you say that your husband feared for his life. Is that correct? Do you happen to know whom he feared?
I don't.
May I take the liberty of asking you a personal question?
Yes?
Were you happily married?
You have no right to ask such a question, Inspector.
I was speaking to Mrs. Blackburn. May I have your answer?
I loved my husband.
Where are you going?
He's run after somebody out there. I saw him too.
Have patience, Ellen.
Oh, why didn't Peter confide in us?
Looks as if his ghosts were real after all.
Watson!
You nearly broke my arm.
What's going on?
Did you catch him?
Watson nearly caught me.
It's ridiculous to search any more in the dark. Inspector, will you please alert the police throughout this district and that of St. Albans to block all the roads and put a guard at the railway stations? Would you please give me your right shoe, Mr. King?
Why?
Your right shoe, Mr. King. Thank you. Wouldn't you agree, Mr. Holmes, that these footprints could have come from this slipper?
Oh, undoubtedly.
The prints lead to the door.
Again, quite correct.
Well, Mr. King?
I must have stepped in it, I guess, when I went to the door.
Really? Wasn't it more likely that you took out the pane of the window from the outside to make it look like a burglary and returned inside to do the murder?
Paul couldn't possibly have done such a crime.
That's what we shall see.
One moment, Inspector.
I'll have to ask you please not to interfere in this, Mr. Holmes.
I merely wish to point out that the footprints do not stop at the door. Mr. King's footprints lead to a heap of earth over there.